Bible in a Year, the Message version, June 2nd, 2 Samuel chapter 19, verse 11 through chapter 20, verse 14. When David heard what was being said, he sent word to Zadok and Abiathar, the priests. Ask the elders of Judah, "Why are you so laggard in bringing the king back home? You're my brothers. You're my flesh and blood. So why are you the last ones to bring the king back home?" And tell and may say, "You too are my flesh and blood, as God is my witness. I'm making you the permanent commander of the army in place of Joab." He captured the hearts of everyone in Judah. They were unanimous in sending for the king. "Come back, you and all your servants." So the king returned. He arrived at the Jordan just as Judah reached Gilgal, on their way to welcome the king and escort him across the Jordan. Even Shimei, son of Gera, the Benjamite from Bahurim, hurried down to join the men of Judah so that he could welcome the king. 1,000 Benjamites with him, and Ziba, Saul's steward, with his 15 sons and 20 servants, waded across the Jordan to meet the king, and brought his entourage across, doing whatever they could to make the king comfortable. Shimei, son of Gera, bowed deeply in homage to the king as soon he was across the Jordan, and said, "Don't think badly of me, my master. Overlook my irresponsible outbursts on the day my master, the king, left Jerusalem. Don't hold it against me. I know I sinned. But look at me now, the first of all the tribe of Joseph, to come down and welcome back my master, the king." Abishai, son of Zerah, interrupted, "Enough of this. Shouldn't we kill him outright? Why, he cursed God's anointed." But David said, "What is it with you, son of Zerah? Why do you insist on being so contentious? Nobody is going to be killed today. I am again king over Israel." Then the king turned to Shimei. "You're not going to die." And the king gave him his word. Next, Mephibosheth, grandson of Saul, arrived from Jerusalem to welcome the king. He hadn't combed his hair or trimmed his beard or washed his clothes from the day the king left until the day he returned safe and sound. The king said, "And why didn't you come with me, Mephibosheth?" "My master, the king," he said, "my servant betrayed me. I told him to saddle my donkey so I could ride it and go with the king. For, as you know, I am lame. And then he lied to you about me. But my master, the king, has been like one of God's angels. He knew what was right and did it. Wasn't everyone in my father's house doomed? But you took me in and gave me a place at your table. What more could I ever expect or ask?" "That's enough," said the king. "Say no more. Here's my decision. You and Ziba divide the property between you." Mephibosheth said, "Oh, let him have it all. All I care about is that my master, the king, is home safe and sound." Barzillai, the Gildite, had come down from Rogelim. He crossed the Jordan with the king to give him a good send-off. Barzillai was a very old man, 80 years old. He had supplied the king's needs all the while he was in Mahanaim, since he was very wealthy. "Join me in Jerusalem," the king said to Barzillai. "Let me take care of you." But Barzillai declined the offer. "How long do you think I'd live if I went with the king to Jerusalem? I'm 80 years old and not much good anymore to anyone. Can't taste food, can't hear music. So why add to the burden of my master the king? I'll just go a little way across the Jordan with the king. But why would the king need to make a great thing of that? Let me go back and die in my hometown and be buried with my father and mother. But my servant, Kimham here, let him go with you in my place, but treat him well." The king said, "That's settled. Kimham goes with me, and I will treat him well. If you think of anything else, I'll do that for you too." The army crossed the Jordan, but the king stayed. The king kissed and blessed Barzillai, who then returned home. Then the king, Kimham with him, crossed over Gilgal. The whole army of Judah and half the army of Israel proceeded with the king. The men of Israel came to the king and said, "Why have our brothers, the men of Judah, taken over as they owned the king, escorting the king and his family and close associates across the Jordan?" The men of Judah retorted, "Because the king is related to us, that's why. But why make a scene? You don't see us getting treated special because of it, do you?" The men of Israel shot back, "We have 10 shares in the king to your 1. Besides, we're the firstborn, so why are we having to play second fiddle? It was our idea to bring him back." But the men of Judah took a harder line than the men of Israel. Just then, a good-for-nothing named Sheba, son of Bichri, the Benjamite, blew a blast on the ram's horn trumpet, calling out, "We've got nothing to do with David. There's no fortune for us with the son of Jesse. Let's get out of here, Israel. Head for your tents." So all the men of Israel deserted David and followed Sheba, son of Bichri. But the men of Judah stayed committed, sticking with their king all the way from the Jordan to Jerusalem. When David arrived home in Jerusalem, the king took the 10 concubines he had left to watch the palace and placed them in seclusion under the guard. He provided for their needs, but didn't visit them. They were virtual prisoners until they died, widows as long as they lived. The king ordered Amasa, "Muster the men of Judah for me in 3 days, then report in." Amasa went to carry out his orders, but was late reporting back. So David told Abishai, "Sheba, son of Bichri, is going to hurt us, even worse than Absalom did. Take your master's servants and hunt him down before he gets holed up in some fortress city where we can't get to him." So, under Abishai's command, all the best men, Joab's men, and the Kirthites and Pelethites left Jerusalem to hunt down Sheba, son of Bichri. They were near the boulder at Gibeon when Amasa came their way. Joab was wearing a tunic, with a sheathed sword strapped on his waist, but the sword slipped out and fell to the ground. Joab greeted Amasa, "How are you, brother?" and took Amasa's beard in his right hand as to kiss him. Amasa didn't notice the sword in Joab's other hand. Joab struck him in the belly, and his guts spilled to the ground. A second blow wasn't needed. He was dead. Then Joab and his brother Abishai continued to chase Sheba, son of Bichri. One of Joab's soldiers took up his post over the body and called out, "Everyone who sides with Joab and supports David, follow Joab." Amasa was lying in a pool of blood in the middle of the road. The man realized that the whole army was going to stop and take a look. So he pulled Amasa's corpse off the road into the field and threw a blanket over him so it wouldn't collect spectators. As soon as he had gotten him off the road, the traffic flowed normally, following Joab in the chase after Sheba, son of Bichri. Sheba passed through all the tribes of Israel as far as Abel, Beth, Maachah, and Bichrites clusters, and followed him into the city. John chapter 21, verse 1 through verse 25. After this, Jesus appeared again to the disciples, this time at the Tiberias Sea, the Sea of Galilee. This is how he did it. Simon Peter, Thomas, nicknamed Twin, Nathanael from Canaan in Galilee, the brothers Zebedee, and two other disciples were together. Simon Peter announced, "I'm going fishing." The rest of them replied, "We're going with you." They went out and got in the boat. They caught nothing that night. When the sun came up, Jesus was standing on the beach, but they didn't recognize him. Jesus spoke to them. "Good morning. Did you catch anything for breakfast?" They answered no. He said, "Throw the net off the right side of the boat and see what happens." They did what he said. All of a sudden, there were so many fish in it, they weren't strong enough to pull it in. Then the disciple Jesus loved said to Peter, "It's the Master." When Simon Peter realized that it was the Master, he threw on some clothes, for he was stripped for work, and dove into the sea. The other disciples came in by boat, for they weren't far from the land, 100 yards or so, pulling along the net full of fish. When they got out of the boat, they saw a fire laid, with fish and bread cooking on it. Jesus said, "Bring some of the fish you've just caught." Simon Peter joined them and pulled the net to shore, 153 big fish. And even with all those fish, the net didn't rip. Jesus said, "Breakfast is ready." Not one of the disciples dared ask, "Who are you?" They knew it was the Master. Jesus then took the bread and gave it to them. He did the same with the fish. This was now the third time Jesus had shown himself alive to the disciples since being raised from the dead. After breakfast, Jesus said to Simon Peter, "Simon, son of John, do you love me more than these?" "Yes, Master, you know I love you." Jesus said, "Feed my lambs." He then asked a second time, "Simon, son of John, do you love me?" "Yes, Master, you know I love you." Jesus said, "Shepherd my sheep." Then he said it a third time, "Simon, son of John, do you love me?" Peter was upset that he had asked for the third time, "Do you love me?" So he answered, "Master, you know everything there is to know. You've got to know that I love you." Jesus said, "Feed my sheep. I'm telling you the very truth now. When you were young, you dressed yourself and went wherever you wished. But when you get old, you'll have to stretch out your hands while someone else dresses you and takes you where you don't want to go." He said this to hint at the kind of death by which Peter would glorify God, and then he commanded, "Follow me." Turning his head, Peter noticed the disciple John loved following right behind. When Peter noticed him, he asked Jesus, "Master, what's going to happen to him?" Jesus said, "If I want him to live until I come again, what's that to you? You follow me." That is how the rumor got out among the brothers that this disciple wouldn't die. But that is not what Jesus said. He simply said, "If I want him to live until I come again, what's that to you?" This is the same disciple who was eyewitness to all these things and wrote them down. And we all know that his eyewitness account is reliable and accurate. There are so many other things Jesus did. If they were all written down, each of them, one by one, I can't imagine a world big enough to hold such a library of books. Psalm chapter 120, verse 1 through verse 7. A pilgrim song. I'm in trouble. I cry to God, desperate for an answer. Deliver me from the liars, God. They smile so sweetly but lie through their teeth. Do you know what's next? Can you see what's coming? All you bold-faced liars, pointed arrows and burning coals will be your reward. I'm doomed to live in Meshech, cursed with a home in Kedar. My whole life lived camping among quarreling neighbors. I'm all for peace. But the minute I tell them so, they go to war. Proverbs chapter 16, 16 through verse 17. Get wisdom. It's worth more than money. Choose insight over income every time. The road of right living bypasses evil. Watch your step and save your life. This was a daily reading from the Message version of the Bible, read to you by Bible in a Year.